So Tom Brady opened his mouth and instantly wished he hadn't. It started off like any other NFL talking head moment. Brady, the golden boy of the league, sitting on a sleek podcast set, surrounded by hosts nodding like bobbleheads, was asked about the state of the game. You know, the usual old-school vet-turned-sideline philosopher routine. And for a second, it seemed harmless. He was talking about leadership, teamwork, tradition, his greatest hits. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. But then he took a turn. A weird one. He starts criticizing today's quarterbacks. Their lack of humility, their flashy post-touchdown dances, their constant social media branding. And he didn't name names at first. But then, just casually, as if he were commenting on the weather, he brought up Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, said something about how their touchdown celebrations were too much, called them self-promotional, said it wasn't what the game was supposed to be about. And that's when everyone stopped breathing. Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't Brady use to scream at refs, spike footballs, fist pump like a frat boy after a beer pong win? Yes, he did. But apparently, if he did it, it was leadership, passion, fire. But when Shedeur Sanders points to the sky, or Deshaun Watson drops a dance move in the end zone, suddenly it's showboating. Suddenly it's not the Patriot way. Funny how that works. The internet went full DEFCON 1. Within hours, Tom Brady was trending, but not for another retirement comeback. No, this time, it was for making that comment, the one that wasn't explicitly racist, but had just enough racial undertones to crack the stadium ceiling open and let all the uncomfortable conversations pour in. Because let's not pretend this is new. Black quarterbacks have always been held to a different standard. They're told to lead, not dance. To be stoic, not joyful. When a white QB screams on the sideline, he's a field general. When a black QB celebrates, he's immature, selfish, not a team player. And when Tom Brady decides to draw a direct line between two of the league's most high-profile black quarterbacks and the concept of self-branding, it doesn't take a decoder ring to see what's happening. You don't need to say the quiet part out loud when you've already written it in bold font. What made it worse? Brady tried to play it like it was a neutral observation. It's just about the team, about unity, as if Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson weren't literally carrying their teams through chaos, as if black quarterbacks haven't had to be twice as perfect just to be seen as equals. And honestly, the timing couldn't have been worse. The NFL has been on this whole self-congratulatory tour about diversity and inclusion, slapping and racism decals on the turf like that's going to fix decades of bias. And then the league's most iconic figure casually drops a statement that reads like a microaggression straight out of 2005. It was like someone scratched a record in the middle of a celebration. Let's talk about instant regret, because it didn't take long. The backlash came fast. Athletes started speaking out. Fans posted side-by-side videos. Brady spiking the ball in someone's face versus Shedeur pointing to the heavens after a 60-yard dime. Think pieces, podcasts, Twitter threads that could qualify as dissertations. Suddenly, Brady was no longer just a GOAT. He was a guy who still thinks a little dance in the end zone is a threat to football itself. And don't forget, Shedeur and Deshaun, they didn't even clap back immediately, which somehow made it more powerful. Shedeur just posted a video of one of the celebrations with no caption, no anger, just vibes, letting the tape speak louder than words. The silence said, I'm not even entertaining this nonsense. But we all knew what it meant. The real issue here isn't just that Brady made a tone-deaf remark. It's that people like him still see expressive black athletes as a disruption to the purity of the game. Never mind that these guys are role models, leaders, and literal game changers. Never mind that football itself has evolved into a spectacle that depends on personality. To them, if you're not buttoned up and deferential, you're out of line. And it always seems to be the black athletes who are out of line. Look, we get it. Brady comes from the old school, the Bill Belichick school of act like you've been there before. But even Belichick's trying to smile these days. Meanwhile, Tom is on a podcast calling touchdown celebrations a distraction from the team. Bro, you're doing shirtless boat parades with the Lombardi Trophy. Sit down. Here's where it gets deeper. People started pulling receipts, not just on Brady celebrations, but his whole vibe when he was winning. The sideline tantrums, the screaming at teammates, the jawing at refs, the shade toward opponents. And suddenly his whole respect the game sermon started looking real selective. Because when Tom Brady's fired up, it's intensity. When Deshaun Watson is fired up, it's ego. When Brady's passionate, he's a leader. When Shedeur Sanders celebrates, he's a problem. You see the pattern? And it's not just about Brady. It's about what he represents. He's the face of the NFL's golden era. He's the standard. So when he casually critiques black quarterbacks for expressing themselves, it validates the people who've always wanted to say they need to act right. Suddenly, every bitter fan, every grumpy analyst who's been dying to drag black QBs without saying why, feels justified. Even Brady thinks it's a problem. And that's the real danger, not the comment itself, but the wave it creates. Because when someone that influential speaks without awareness, it ripples, it reinforces, it legitimizes the double standard. And don't think the league didn't notice. Whispers started about damage control, PR advisors scrambling. Should he apologize? Was it misunderstood? Do we release a clarifying statement? Because Tom Brady, for all his greatness, is still a brand. And brands, they don't like controversy that hints at racism, even the accidental kind. So, of course, a clarification came. One of those vague, fence-sitting notes on a story. I have immense respect for all players. My comments were never meant to target anyone. I simply believe in team-first football. Okay, sure, Tom. But why did you only name the black quarterbacks when you talk about me-first attitudes? Why did you ignore all the celebrations from white players over the years that never bothered you? Why now? The thing is, this whole incident cracked open a conversation people were already having quietly in NFL circles about how quarterbacks of color are still scrutinized more, about how their confidence is seen as cockiness, about how their style is called undisciplined, while white QBs are praised for being unpredictable, about how they still have to earn the right to celebrate. And maybe, just maybe, Brady didn't mean harm. Maybe he really was just speaking from his traditionalist bubble. But that's not the point. The point is, intent doesn't erase impact. And the impact, it was felt. Players who've been walking on eggshells their whole careers suddenly saw Brady's comments as confirmation of what they always suspected. That they're being watched differently, judged differently, held to a standard that was never applied to the people holding them back. And what does this mean for Brady's legacy? Will he be canceled? No. Let's be honest. He's untouchable to a degree. But that sheen, that invincible, untouchable GOAT polish, it's cracked, not shattered, just cracked enough for people to start reevaluating. Because it's not just about what you did on the field. It's about what you stood for. And this wasn't it. So where do we go from here? Hopefully, forward. Hopefully, toward a league that doesn't flinch when a black quarterback dances. One that sees swagger as part of the game, not a threat to it. One that really listens when players say, I'm more than just a system piece. And as for Brady, maybe he takes a step back. Maybe he listens. Maybe he learns. Or maybe he doesn't. But the message is clear. You can be the greatest of all time and still have blind spots. And if you're going to speak on the state of the game, make sure you're not just playing from your highlight reel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Was Brady out of line or just out of touch? And how do we move the culture forward when even legends keep dragging us back? Smash that subscribe button for more breakdowns, meltdowns, and moments that shake the sports world to its core. Because this wasn't just a bad take. This was a wake-up call. All right, buckle up. Because if you thought the fallout from Tom Brady's comments was loud, you haven't heard the echo. Because it didn't just shake the NFL. It spilled out into barbershops, classrooms, Twitter spaces, morning shows, everywhere. You couldn't even check your fantasy lineup without seeing someone side-eyeing the GOAT. And the part that stung most? It wasn't just what Brady said. It was a realization that someone so celebrated, so revered, could still be walking around with blinders on. After all this time, after all the progress, after all the inclusion slogans painted on helmets. People weren't angry because Brady made an unforgivable mistake. They were angry because he casually confirmed a suspicion that never really went away. That no matter how perfect, how poised, how polished black quarterbacks are, they're still being measured against a different ruler. One that shifts the goalpost the moment they show joy, or confidence, or any flavor of individuality that doesn't fit into the NFL's buttoned-up, Brady-approved vision of what a leader looks like. Let's talk about the symbolism of all this. Tom Brady is the NFL's ultimate golden boy, a walking dynasty, the guy who made winning look routine. But he also represented a certain brand of football purity, humble, focused, calculated, corporate. And for years, that was the only model of success quarterbacks were supposed to follow. Until a new generation came in and said, nah, we're going to do it our way. Enter Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders. Athletes who weren't just redefining the position with freakish talent, but with style, with charisma, with swagger. Guys who didn't just win games. They told stories while doing it. And that, right there, is what still ruffles feathers. Because for some fans, and yes, even some former players, the game's evolution feels like a threat. They'll never say it directly, but it's in the way they talk about discipline, humility, and character, as if passion isn't professional, as if dancing in the end zone somehow makes a quarterback less of a leader. But you know what? These quarterbacks know they're under the microscope. They know one Mustime grin, one flex after a 50-yard bomb, one too many hashtags, and suddenly they're being painted as selfish or cocky or ungrateful. So when Tom Brady, the guy, decides to zero in on that exact narrative, it stings. Because whether he meant to or not, he reinforced every quiet bias these players have been fighting their entire careers. And the irony? Brady built his legacy on emotion, on fire, on sideline rants and comeback theatrics. The man broke clipboards and cussed out coaches. And nobody questioned his leadership. But when Shedeur Sanders points to the stands after a 4-touchdown game, now we've got a sportsmanship problem. Come on, you can't have it both ways. You can't hold up one guy's emotion as passion and call another man's joy a problem, especially when that double standard consistently breaks down along racial lines. And honestly, Brady should have known better. He's not some rookie fumbling his first mic. He's been in press conferences longer than some of these players have been alive. He's navigated scandals, criticism, dynasty drama. He knows the weight of his words. So when he speaks, people listen. Players, coaches, fans, brands. And in this case, what they heard wasn't just a critique of celebrations. It was a message. There's a right way to win. And your way isn't it. Now, let's shift to the real-time damage control. Because you know Brady's camp didn't sleep the night that clip went viral. The PR machine kicked in immediately. Calls were made. Social media managers prepped draft tweets. A clarification was issued, but even that felt carefully sanitized. He didn't name drop race. He didn't issue a direct apology. Just vague language about respect and intention and loving the game. The kind of statement that's technically a response, but emotionally a shrug. And the league? Oh! The league stayed silent. Of course they did. Because they know this is a minefield. They don't want to throw Brady on the bus. But they also don't want to look like they're ignoring an uncomfortable truth. So they stall. Pretend it's a personal opinion. Hope it blows over. But it doesn't. Because now players are talking. Not just privately. Not just behind closed doors, but publicly. Podcasts. Instagram lives. TikTok stitches. You've got current stars saying what needed to be said years ago. We see the double standard. We've lived it, and we're done pretending it's not there. Some spoke softly. Some didn't. A few veteran QBs, black and white, came forward to say, hey, maybe we should listen instead of dismiss, which was a nice surprise. Because for once, this wasn't about burning someone at the stake. It was about dragging the truth into the daylight and daring people to see it. And that's the thing about moments like this. They don't create division. They just expose the fault lines that were already there. The cracks in the game's culture that never fully healed. The quiet resentment that comes from being policed for things your peers get praised for. And for Brady? Well, his brand took a hit. Not a collapse, but a dent. The kind you don't forget. The kind that makes people go, next time he shows up in a State Farm ad talking about leadership. He's still the GOAT, sure, but he's no longer untouchable. He's human, flawed, capable of bias, even if unintentional. And maybe that's the hardest pill to swallow for fans who grew up idolizing him, for young QBs who model their game after him, for brands that build entire campaigns around his clean-cut icon persona. Now there's a wrinkle, a question mark, because it turns out even legends can say the wrong thing, and even legends need to learn. So where does this leave us? Hopefully in a better place, because this controversy, messy as it is, has opened the door for a conversation the league needs, not just about celebrations, but about expression, about identity, about respect, because a league that profits from black talent shouldn't try to mute black joy. And if we're really being honest, some of the best moments in football, the moments that made your jaw drop, that made you stand up in your living room, that made you scream, were celebrations, passion, unfiltered emotion. That's what we love about the game. So maybe it's time we stop acting like joy is a threat, like swagger is a sin, like you need be stoic and silent to be respectable. Let the players dance. Let them point to the sky. Let them blow kisses to the haters. Let them scream. Let them flex. Let them be. Because football without personality, without flavor, that's just noise on a field. Tom Brady may not have meant harm, but now he's part of the story. A reminder that even the greats can get it wrong. A reminder that leadership isn't just about wins and rings. It's about knowing when to speak and when to listen. So if you made it this far, here's your assignment. Rewatch those touchdown celebrations. The ones that made you smile. The ones that made you proud. The ones that made you believe in the magic of the game. Now ask yourself, why would anyone want to silence that? You're still here? Good, because we got more to unpack. And honestly, we're just now getting into the soul of this thing. Because when Tom Brady said what he said, whether intentionally or not, he reopened a wound, not just in football culture, but in the deeper, murkier, uglier realm of how black excellence is still received in white institutions. Yeah, I said it. Let's get uncomfortable. Because when a white quarterback like Brady critiques black quarterbacks, not their passing mechanics, not their reads, not the football, but their celebrations, you have to stop and ask, what exactly is being criticized here? Is it the dance, the energy, the expression? Or is it the fact that someone who wasn't supposed to be in that spotlight, who wasn't handed the crown at birth, is now owning that moment so unapologetically? See, that's what makes this more than just a sports story. This is cultural, because the celebration isn't just about the touchdown. It's about survival. It's about proving you belong in a game and a world that was built without you in mind. When Shedeur Sanders points to the heavens after throwing a 40-yard dime in triple coverage, it's not just a flex. It's a thank you. It's a moment of joy after years of being told he was too confident, too flashy, too much. And when Deshaun Watson dances in the end zone, it's not just showboating. It's freedom. It's a declaration. I'm here. I earned this. But when Tom Brady sees that and only responds with, that's not what football is about, it feels less like critique and more like a refusal to understand. It's like watching someone walk into a party that's evolved and say, why isn't it like it used to be when I ran it? The subtext? This doesn't look like my kind of success anymore. And here's the kicker. Brady had the chance to clarify that, to say, hey, maybe I didn't understand what these celebrations mean. Maybe I've been looking at it from the wrong lens. He could have stepped back, reflected, grown. We love a redemption arc. But instead, we got the lukewarm, no-harm-intended statement, the PR Band-Aid over a bullet hole, the non-apology that wasn't meant to open a dialogue. It was meant to end one. And if you were paying attention, you could feel the disappointment ripple through the league. Young black QBs, especially those rising through college right now, had to take a breath. Because let's not forget, Brady is still the blueprint. He's the name they drop in draft interviews, the model for elite mentality, the face of winning. So when that face turns around and Loki implies that your celebration, your expression, your joy isn't right, yeah, that hurts. It tells you that no matter how much you win, how many records you break, how perfectly you play the game, you're still too much if you smile while doing it. And let me be clear, this isn't about tearing Tom Brady down. This is about accountability. Because if you benefited from the pedestal, from the endorsements, from the worship, then you owe it to the culture to show awareness, to use your platform to expand the game, not narrow it. And if you're going to speak on the next generation, you better do it with respect, with curiosity, with context, because this generation, they're not going to just take it quietly. They're not built like that. And that's the part Brady and others like him don't fully understand. These aren't the same players from 2004, smiling politely and nodding along. These quarterbacks, they've seen the blueprint, and they're remixing it. They're building their own brands, launching nonprofits, dominating social media, and still throwing lasers down the field. They're not here to just win. They're here to exist fully, loudly, authentically. And when someone tries to shrink that, to stuff it back into a box labeled humble leader, it's not just tone deaf. It's a threat to everything they built. Let's talk ripple effects. After Brady's remarks, media outlets scrambled to soften the blow. Some try to frame it as a generational thing. Boomer QB doesn't get Gen Z flair. Others said it was just about decorum or sportsmanship. But that kind of framing is dangerous, because it ignores why those celebrations matter so much in the first place. It erases the history of black athletes being told to stay in line, the history of them being fined for end zone dances, the history of coded words like thug, attitude, me first, the long, exhausting tradition of black excellence being praised only when it's quiet and grateful and doesn't ruffle too many feathers. So when Brady's words landed, they didn't just fall, they triggered. And what about the fans? Some of them clapped back immediately. Others, they doubled down. He's right, they said. Football is becoming a circus. Back in the day, players had class. Ah, yes, the magical back in the day, when players were allowed to celebrate as long as it was a high five and not a full-body expression of joy. When black quarterbacks were a rarity and often seen as a risk, what those fans really meant was, I miss when things felt comfortable for me. But the NFL isn't going back. It can't, because the game has evolved. The players have evolved. The audience has evolved. And if the league wants to keep thriving, it has to embrace every flavor of football. The precision, the pageantry, the fire, the joy. Because guess what? Those end zone dances, that finger to the sky, that moment where a black quarterback says, yeah, I did that. That's part of the game now. It's in the DNA. So if you can't handle that, maybe you're the one who's outdated. And Tom Brady, he has two choices now. He can dig in, pretend the conversation is over, stay locked his version of the sport where expression equals ego and joy equals disrespect. Or he can grow. He can reach out. He can listen. He can admit that greatness comes in many forms. And not all of them look like New England in the early 2000s. He can look at someone like Shedeur Sanders and say, you're different. And that's not a threat. It's the future. Because here's the truth that the NFL, its fans, and even its legends need to understand. Black joy is not a threat to football. It's a gift to it. It's part of the heartbeat that keeps this sport alive. It's what turns games into moments. It's what makes fans scream, dance, cry, and believe. So if you're still trying to police that, you're playing defense against progress, and you're going to lose. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was Brady's take out of bounds? Or is this just growing pains as the game evolves? And what does respect really look like in the new NFL? Subscribe if you're here for the drama, the nuance, and the truths that make people squirm. Because this isn't just about football anymore. This is about legacy, culture, and who gets to celebrate their greatness. Out loud.